folks. It's Christmas time!
Yes, Christmas. That joyous season of giving, family get-togethers, and in my case, eggnog, is here once again. All the Christmas specials like Frosty, Rudolph, and Charlie Brown are rerunning on TV. Santa Claus sightings have become a more recent occurrence. The decorations that we all know and love are being set up. Seasonal trees. Trees. It's freaking Christmas, everyone. And I guess you could say that I'm in that old jolly Christmas spirit.
But can you blame me? I have a lot to be thankful for at the twilight of this year. This is the end of my first season reviewing stuff here on YouTube, and I have some subscribers that I'm very thankful to have. Oh, but I'm not the only one who's gotten into the spirit. Shasta here is even in it. Isn't that right, buddy? So since this is the end of my first season, and I'm feeling especially giving, I'm going to review the Lawnmower Man franchise for y'all. That's both the 2 movies and the game. All in a 3-part season finale Christmas special for everyone. Think of it not only as a Christmas gift, but also as a thank you to all those that have supported me throughout the first season. I couldn't have done it without you folks. Your support means everything. No, it's not. But it is, at least in my opinion, symbolic in terms of what kind of era we're entering. Of course. You see, we're entering into an era of new technology, and that technology is virtual reality. Up until now, VR was mostly used for training purposes by either certain companies, usually airlines, and the military. And the reason behind that is the technology for VR, the technology that powered it, was very sophisticated as well as expensive, and thus it wasn't readily available to the public. But times have now changed. The tech that we're all using at this very moment is a lot more sophisticated than it used to be, say, in the 90s or, hell, even a decade ago. For instance, TVs can now present movies, video games, and what have you in 4K HD. That 10 years ago was unheard of. But now, it's here. VR is now pretty much available to the masses. What with companies like HTC, Oculus, and Sony now selling VR headsets in stores, it's not going to be long before other companies decide to capitalize on that kind of tech. Well, enough of me talking about technology and entering into a new era and all. I say it's time we get to the movie now. Oh, but a couple more things before we start the film. The material of which I'm going to review begs me to bring this up. Lawnmower Man happens to share a name with a particular Stephen King short story. However, it has literally nothing to do with said short story. The only connection that this movie has with any works from Stephen King is one particular sentence that was used in the short story and the shop, whom were featured in the book Firestarter. Other than that, the movie has nothing to do with anything by King. And speaking of King, during the later productions of the film, New Line Cinema had actually, and without permission, used Stephen King's name to promote the movie. King didn't like that, so he sued. Not for money, mind you, but rather to have his name stricken from the film, to which New Line did. Another thing that you folks should know about the Lawnmower Man movie is that there are actually 2 versions. There's the uncut, unrated version with additional scenes, and that's the one we're looking at, and then there's the R-rated version. I'm reviewing the uncut one because as far as I'm concerned, this is the definitive version of Lawnmower Man. So, with that out of the way, let's sit back and watch this film.
The movie opens with some texts that go on to explain how by the turn of the millennium, VR will be in widespread use.
I already explained how that's pretty much true.
But the text also goes on to tell how some feel that VR could be used as a form of mind control.
I'd rather not touch on the subject of conspiracy theories.
Anyway, we cut to a semi-ominous building called Virtual Space Industries, or VSI for short, and we're introduced to one of the two main protagonists, Dr. Larry Angelo, played by Pierce Brosnan. Now, Dr. Angelo has been experimenting using brain-stimulant drugs and VR with this chimp here named Roscoe. His experiments have apparently been successful, as he's been able to make Roscoe very smart. However, VSI, the company that Angelo works for, is under contract by the shop, a defense contractor, and the shop is only interested in making a weapon, which, of course, Angelo is against.
It's a trope that's been used for quite some time in entertainment, but it still works. A brilliant scientist has created and or discovered something ingenious, but he unfortunately works for the wrong folks. Some may say that that trope is becoming a bit dated, but I happen to be a fan of it. And Lord knows that there are tropes out there that are light years more dated than this one.
After a bit of exposition by Angelo and this other guy named Timms, we're treated to one of the highlights of the film, the CG effects. Now, I have to say that I fucking love these effects. They, for the time, were damn good. Hell, in my opinion, they still hold up pretty good today. Anyway, since the chimp is being trained as a weapon, he's given aggression-promoting drugs and trained in a battle simulation. I guess you could say that this may allude to how soldiers could be trained in the future, but they're training a chimp, not a human, so they're making a weapon, more or less. So, as expected with a chimp that's smarter than your average ape, Roscoe breaks out of his cage and tries to escape VSI. Whilst escaping, he acquires a pistol, kills a guard, and he does manage to get pretty far, but not without being shot by one of the VSI security personnel.
I'm gonna assume that Roscoe is in the alpha stages of being trained as a weapon, so it's not unlikely for him to get shot.
After the ape has escaped, we cut to this next scene where we're introduced to our other protagonist, Job Smith, played by Jeff Fahey. And I have to say that not only does he make for a good protagonist for this film, he also, spoiler alert, as you will see later on, makes for a good antagonist.
They actually wrote his character very well, and granted, most of the characters in this film are written well, but Job especially. He starts off as a mentally handicapped simpleton, and, you tend to feel for the guy. People in this film tend to take advantage of him simply because he is the way he is. You end up rooting for him, even when he becomes the antagonist of the movie. Now that, to me, is good writing.
So it turns out that Roscoe has made it as far away from VSI as to end up at Job's house, and being what he is, perceives Job as a threat. And Job, being what he is, thinks that Roscoe is one of the characters from one of his favorite comic books.
Bleeding, Cybo Man.
Non-threat.
After that little meet and greet, it turns out that VSI is searching for Roscoe, and Job decides to give him shelter in his home. Next, we're introduced to this character named Father McKean, and you're all gonna find out soon enough that he's not such a nice guy.
Godless little creatures at the altar. Job? Job? Where are you, boy? You're never here where you should be.
So he walks on over to Job's house and finds that the chimp is in there with him, and like the nosy little prick that he is, decides to call the police.
Again, you'll see why I'm not fond of this character soon enough.
Doesn't take long for VSI to catch wind of where their experiment has run off to, and they move their men out. Dr. Angelo comes with them, and he insists on capturing Roscoe rather than just straight up killing him.
Okay, I'll go in there. I'll get Job out, all right? You just gotta promise me one thing. That I take Roscoe out alive, okay?
So Angelo gets on a bullhorn and tries to coax Job into coming outside with Roscoe. This initially seems to work until Roscoe has a flashback and, figuratively speaking, goes apeshit. Job is of course disturbed by this whole fiasco and goes a little apeshit himself. Fortunately, Father McKean,
In the only scene in the entire film where it actually seems like he gives a damn about Job,
tries to calm him down and tells the VSI goons to get lost. However, this little show of humanity from Father McKean quickly becomes dark in this next scene where he explains to Job that his actions endangered McKean's church and he is to tell no one what happened. And then we get this.
dude, what the fuck? Dude, that is a fucking low thing to do to someone with a mental handicap. That makes you a goddamn bully, Father. You know what? I hope that son of a bitch gets what's coming to him.
After that little bit of cruelty, we come to the next scene where we're introduced to this guy, a landscaper named Terry, Father McKean's brother and Job's employer. Fortunately, he's nothing like his asshole brother. In fact, he's actually really nice, especially to Job.
What do we got here? Oh, no. Oh, my God, would you look at this?
That is one bitchin' ass looking lawnmower.
So after being introduced to Terry, we come to this scene here where Angelo tells Timms that he wants to quit VSI and continue his work in the private sector, only for Timms to tell Angelo that he signed ironclad non-disclosures when he got hired by VSI. In other words, the shop owns everything, and Angelo can't continue his work. Timms then suggests that he should take a break.
Why don't you take a hiatus and we'll restructure around here?
In this next scene, we're introduced to another character named Jake, the local bully, I guess you could say.
Which kind of begs the question, isn't he a bit old to be a playground bully?
Come here, you noodle brain.
I love being a boy!
I guess. And it's not like his character is written bad or anything, but still. He's definitely not acting his age. Shut up, Shasta.
Anyway, we jump back to Dr. Angelo, who's taken Tim's advice on taking a break. However, it seems like the good doctor is going through some marital issues. His wife wants to go out and do shit, and Angelo doesn't. I can understand Angelo's frustrations with his work being halted and shit, but at the same time, that's his wife. Her needs matter too.
I'm young, Larry, okay? And I'm not going to become a recluse just for you. I'm into reality, not this artificial reality.
Caroline, this technology is going to change the world. This is the future. And you're afraid of it.
Yeah, well, it may be the future to you, Larry, but it's the same old shit to me.
In this next scene, we're introduced to a few more characters. Job's kid friend here named Peter, played by Austin O'Brien, and his mom and dad. Turns out Peter's dad is abusive, both physically and verbally, and he doesn't like Peter hanging around Job because he thinks he's a moron.
Hi, Dad.
Peter, I told you not to leave that fucking bike in my way again, didn't I? Didn't I?
Sorry,
Didn't
Dad.
I? What is wrong with you? I tell you not to play with that moron anymore? You want to get stupid? Get out of the house. I'm tired of this shit. Come on.
Shasta, you know as well as I do that if I don't introduce these characters, then I won't be able to cover much of the story details for the next movie plus the game.
So after a while of not working, Dr. Angelo's aspirations to do more VR work has reached a fevered pitch. So he decides to conduct experiments once again. And who better of a test subject than a mentally handicapped person? So he talks a little bit to Job and invites him into his house to play some games. Games that he's not very good at.
Game over.
Angelo then takes Job aside and tells him that he can make him smarter, adding that if he were more intelligent, people would be less likely to take advantage of him.
I can make you smarter. But only if you want. And you must never tell anyone.
You mean a secret for just you and me too?
That's right.
He convinces Job to pretty much become his experiment, and he gets right to work. And in my opinion, this scene in and of itself is pretty symbolic of the cool as hell cyberpunk feel that this movie was going for.
Brainstem strobe enabled.
Is that my hand? Ah! It's gonna hit me! No, Joe, it's not gonna hit you. Just relax. Just breathe.
Strobe velocity increasing.
During the VR procedures, Job has a mild seizure. Angelo, however, says that he'll keep a tighter control over the stem flow, the stuff that makes Job smarter, so that another seizure won't happen again. It turns out, though, that the treatment results are positive, as we now see Job being able to read.
Let me see that. Let me see that. Tell Dr. Angelo that you're here to work and not to read books. No wonder you've been so difficult lately.
Let the boy have his book, Francis. It's not going to hurt anything. You're such a pious asshole.
Great effort has kept him on the straight and narrow. I'll not have it undone.
Well, at least he's trying to use his mind. Let him be a man. He is one, you know.
More drunken nonsense from you, Terry. What have you got to say for yourself, Job?
Nothing. Got to stand up to him, Joe boy. For yourself.
Oh, we get to see that soon enough. Take a gander at this.
What are you doing? Why are you standing there half naked, exposing yourself? What sort of perverted behavior is this?
You know you should knock before you come into somebody's house. This is my house.
That Dr. Angelo, isn't it? He's been feeding the devil in your head.
No, he hasn't.
I'll see to that.
You know you shouldn't hit people.
Bravo, Joe, bravo. You tell that fucker off.
Back to Dr. Angelo, we see he and Tim's discussing how he has had success with his experiments on Job, how he's gone as far as he could with his own equipment, and how he wants to continue his VR treatments at VSI. Tim's agrees, and then we get this scene where Job is hit on by this hot little number here. This doesn't make Jake, being the bully and all, very happy, though.
If someone looked at me that way, I'd probably back off too.
Anyway, we cut back to Job and Angelo driving to the VSI building, and Angelo showing Job the big one, the virtual reality geospheres that'll turn Job into a genius. It's basically the same as what the Doctor was doing with his own stuff, but at the same time, it's more advanced.
Prepare brainstem injection. Initiate brainstem.
Insertion complete.
So we see Job back at his day job, but do you folks remember that hot chick from a second ago? Well, she invites Job into her house for some lemonade, and Job gets lucky.
Now, due to YouTube's policy on sexual content, I can't show you guys just how far this scene goes, but you folks get the gist of it.
So after that little sexcapade, Dr. Angelo shows Job the interactive virtual teacher, a computer that teaches everything from history to mathematics and even philosophy, art, and science. It's here that we see that Job has become incredibly intelligent, as he's been able to go through all the discs that were available to him. His memory retention has even reached inhuman levels, as he's increased the speed of which info was given to him through the virtual teacher. In other words, Job's become a genius.
My mind is blazing. It's filling with information. What I've learned in virtual reality makes books obsolete.
It only makes sense. This is the technology that transformed me.
We later see Job and Peter hanging out, and then this happens.
Job? Are you alright? Job? I don't got time for this. I hope he doesn't puke on the counter.
What's wrong with that food? I've probably been taking it.
Oh my god, look at that guy.
Whatever the hell they call him. I'll be dancing with the big lady. That's what you're doing right now.
After that little scene, Job pays a visit to Dr. Angelo to tell him about his little episode. Apparently he's developing psychic powers, which has the doctor both amazed and concerned. Angelo then decides to tell Timms, who believes that it is time to take the VR stuff public, which means taking the results to the shop, as we see here with Timms talking with the shop's director.
Precisely why we feel it's time for you to begin guiding these efforts in a specific direction.
Which direction is that?
We're most anxious to see what effect the original Project 5 formulas will have on this subject.
Mr. Director, if you remember, the aggression vectors in Project 5 caused
That
violent
was an
reactions.
ape, Timms. We want to know what effect it will have on a human subject.
After that conversation, Timms decides to switch the drugs that Angelo's been using on Job to the original batch of drugs that were used on Roscoe.
You would think that after the experiment with the ape, which yielded negative results, the shop would actually reconsider its stance on trying to create a weapon. Good point.
Back to the VR treatments, apparently giving Job the original batch of drugs was kind of a mistake, as his brain swells. But according to Angelo, the brain swelling just miraculously disappeared, leaving no indications that anything had ever happened. It turns out that this treatment has increased Job's psychic powers, as now he has telekinetic abilities. We even see him raise blisters on his own hand.
Okay. If I had telekinetic powers, I know for a fact that I wouldn't be using them to mutilate parts of my body.
So we see Job and that hot chick watching TV here, and Job wants to have sex, but not in the usual fashion, rather in a more virtual kind of way. Everything seems to go well for the two until Job has another episode, and he unfortunately fucks up the hot chick's mind. We then see Job showing Angelo how his telekinetic abilities, which Timms unfortunately sees.
By now, we all know where his priorities lie.
And we hear Job talk about how it's time to start tapping into new areas of the brain. Angelo isn't exactly for that, and then this.
No. You're trying to get inside my head, Job. I can feel you pushing.
You realize, Dr. Angelo, that my intelligence has surpassed yours.
After that, we see Angelo presenting his work to the shop and trying to persuade them into further funding his research. However, during the presentation, Tim spills the beans to Angelo on what has been happening behind his back. This pisses the ever-loving fuck out of the good doctor, and he storms off. We then cut back to Job conducting the VR treatments on himself. This causes Job to develop even stronger psychic powers, and he goes on a warpath. He sets that asshole Father McKean on fire, beats up Jake with gas pumps, then mind warps him into a catatonic state, and then he kills Peter's dad with the lawnmower.
I can't say that I feel sorry for any of these people. After all, they picked on Job when he was mentally handicapped.
After realizing what the shop has done with Job without his knowledge, he deems it necessary to return home and reverse what they did. However, it's too late, as he sees Job has already gone on a rampage. He even sees that Job can now influence and alter people's very minds, as we see with the police officers here.
Well, accidents happen, that's all there is to it.
Accidents? You were just calling them murders.
Oh, no, we'll just file a routine report, just clean and tidy.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
Move along.
Move along.
After that, we see Angelo explaining to Job that he has had a psychotic break, and he wants to help reverse it. However, Job now believes himself to be a god, and what's worse, he has a master plan. He tells Angelo that he's going back to VSI to complete the final stage of his evolution, where he will become pure energy. From there, he will project himself into the World Wide Web, and by the time the new millennium hits, everybody will be hooked into VR, and by extension, into him.
Once I've entered the neural net, my birth cry will be the sound of every phone on this planet ringing in unison. Cyber cry.
The shop then comes to pick Job up, but we soon see just how under-equipped they are, as Job not only has control over Angelo's wife, whom unfortunately gets killed, but he can do the impossible, such as being able to separate and disperse atoms. After that little show of godlike powers, Job decides to hitch a ride back to VSI from Terry, whom he's also mentally controlling. Peter unties Angelo, and he explains to Peter what's happening. Angelo then uploads a virus to VSI's mainframe in hopes of stopping Job in his tracks. After that, he picks up some explosives from the van that the shop guys came in, and he tells Peter's mother what he told Peter.
I can't explain now, but I need the keys to your car. All of these
My
are shot to
God,
hell.
Larry, why don't we listen?
I understand, but I need to get to VSI. This is an emergency.
Job's there, isn't he?
Yes, Peter, and Job needs my help.
Why is Job at VSI?
Carla, go get the car now!
Back at VSI, Timms orders the security personnel to stand outside the gate. However, they prove to be no match for Job and his superpowers. There is one security guard left, but he soon gets the axe after killing Terry. Job soon after quickly makes work of Timms, and Angelo finally makes it back to VSI.
It's the final showdown, folks.
Job then projects himself into VSI's mainframe and becomes pure energy, whilst Angelo sets up the explosives inside the building. After Job gets into the mainframe, he tries to escape into the world's net, only to be stopped by Angelo's virus.
Now to get out of here. Simple combination.
Access denied.
The Doctor then goes into VR to try to talk Job down. However, Job doesn't go for it and decides to attack.
Idiocy makes me very angry.
Access denied. 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 Access denied.
After being crucified, Job finds out that Angelo has planted bombs around VSI and tries to stop them. He finds out, though, that he can't because after becoming pure energy, he has lost all power over the physical world.
You can't defuse the bombs, can you? You lost all your power over the physical world once you transferred in here.
Job then hears Peter's voice echo through the building, and in one final show of humanity, he lets Angelo go so that he and Peter can get out before the bombs explode.
Get down, Peter, quick, quick! Get down, get down! Oh, God.
Before the final explosives go off, Job finds a back door in the mainframe and finally enters the net. VSI is destroyed, and we get this last bit of wisdom from Angelo.
If we can somehow embrace our wisdom instead of ignorance, this technology will free the mind of man, not enslave it.
We're ready.
Good. They'll be here soon. Okay, let's go.
And that was Lawnmower Man, folks, and it gets an A for awesome. It's one of my favorite films, and I'm very happy that I got to review it.
Lawnmower Man is a damn good film. It's also kind of underrated. I think everyone should see it. It's got a lot to offer. It has that cyberpunk feel going on, the CG animation was really good, the characters were well written, the concept was beyond cool, and the movie has great sci-fi and action moments. But as with anything, there are a couple problems. One of the issues, at least on my end, is a little more nitpicky than anything else. For instance, in my opinion, Dr. Angelo becomes a less than likable character during the final act of the movie. But he's still an all-around awesome character, and he was just as every bit integral to the movie as Job. The other issue, which actually really is a problem that I have with this film, is that the uncut version can only be found on VHS and Laserdisc. Unless you have a regionless DVD or Blu-ray player, you won't be finding an uncut version of Lawnmower Man anytime soon. Not in the United States or Canada, anyway. And that really sucks, because this uncut film is the definitive version. It was what the creators of Lawnmower Man intended the viewers to see. So, if you have a regionless DVD or Blu-ray player, seeing as that there is an uncut DVD and Blu-ray of Lawnmower Man in the UK, get it. Or, if you still have a VHS or, hell, a Laserdisc player, get it. Lawnmower Man is an awesome film. and it is well worth watching.
Well, folks, all this Lawnmower Man stuff is just too big to fit into one review, so stay tuned as Shasta and I take a look at the movie sequel, Lawnmower Man 2. See you guys in the next review.